On Bike Rebellion this week, I spoke to Keala Rusher. Keala is the outreach manager and a board member at Bike SD. She's a fierce advocate for safe bicycle infrastructure and sustainable cities. In this conversation, we talk about our journeys and our reasons for using bikes as transportation. We speak about the benefits and challenges of life by bike and how we can motivate others to join us. We met Keala in Balboa Park, along the trail system south of the velodrome. Enjoy. Yeah, I guess we just get started. This is our first time, so thank you so much for being here. This is it's exciting for us, and I've wanted to do something like this for a while, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, and it's awesome to see it finally coming to fruition. So welcome to the Bicycle Rebellion podcast. My name is Brian, and I'll be your host. On this show, we'll talk about bicycle transportation, why we do it, the advantages and challenges of life by bike, and how to set yourself up for success when preparing for life by bike. Our goal is to help bicycle curious commuters reduce their dependence on cars. Our guests include bicycle commuters who are doing the work and riding the miles. They are organizers and advocates building communities with bicycles so that we may have a safer and more sustainable transportation system in the future. Today our guest is Keala Rusher, the outreach manager at Bike ST, my favorite bike advocacy organization. Welcome, Keala, and thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Brian. It's an honor to be one of the first guests. There are so many people, so many people who are really deserving of being on the show, and I know you'll have them on eventually.
Yeah, we'll get there, and we would love your suggestions on who to include.
With a few folks in mind.
But we, I do recognize that you are one of the people in San Diego really doing the work, and having influence in building out real bicycle infrastructure here, and we certainly appreciate it. Just a note that we are recording this episode in Balboa Park, out along the bike trails behind the velodrome on March 30th, 2025. Keala, if you could introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what your background is, and what's important to you.
Of course. My name is Keala Rusher. I am from coastal Los Angeles County. I grew up biking. I remember riding my bike or scootering to school in 2nd through 5th grade. But I really became conscious of using bikes as transportation when I was in college in Los Angeles and didn't have a car. I would take the light rail to jobs and internships. And when I first moved to San Diego, almost 6 years ago, my first job was 30 minutes each way on the freeway, and that was really challenging, and I feel like it took a real toll on my psychological well-being. Just to be in a car for such a long time can be kind of a drag, and so eventually I found a job that I can commute by bike to, and simultaneously found Bike SD around the same time about 3 years ago. And since then I've been involved with Bike San Diego, which is a volunteer-driven nonprofit which uses outreach and programs and advocates for safe, protected bike infrastructure for all ages and abilities. And this work is really important to me personally, because I think it's important to have a livable planet. And our future is dependent in figuring out ways that we can make that happen and transition from a car-centric and fossil fuel economy to one that's more sustainable, and I see bikes as the way that we can do that.
We are totally aligned on that. And I'm gonna just introduce myself briefly, just because this is our first episode and people have no idea who I am yet. But yeah, our sort of missions and experience, I think, are aligned actually in time as well as in sort of our feelings and why we do it. I'm also an environmental activist, and that's really why I started bike commuting, was just I could no longer in good conscience, drive a car every day.
Really?
But so just to introduce myself, I'm Brian Hoffman. I'm a cargo bike commuter and bike mobility activist, I would say. For my work, I'm a marine technician and a social impact entrepreneur. I loved bikes since I was a kid, and I rediscovered bicycles for transportation about 10 years ago. But I am a recovering automobile enthusiast. I worked on cars. I built cars. Worked on engines and did various things, and it was a big part of my life for a long, long time. And about 10 years ago, I really just rediscovered bicycles as really the way to get around for me, and my situation afforded me that I could do it. Now I ride a customized electric cargo bike every day.
Oh my gosh.
Whoops.
It's all good. Sweet.
Maybe we'll cut that, but I ride a customized electric cargo bike every day, and I hope to help others make that transition from cars to bikes as easy and as painless as is possible. That's really the goal behind all of this.
Yeah, I feel like that's a common story for people to be really into cars and then like transition into like bike and active transportation advocacy.
Yeah.
I know a few people who have
Yeah,
been part of that pipeline.
Yeah, boats, cars. I've for myself, I still work on boats, and I know how much damage they do to the environment. Like, especially the boats that I work on are like privately owned power boats for the most part, and I do what I can to sort of set them up so there aren't oil spills, and so people can operate them safely and not have emergencies and stuff like that. But it's a challenge to really work on these big destructive machines still, while I have this awareness at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to find the balance between those two things.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the boats and the bikes.
So, what I think is sort of a good place to start in identifying why we do this. Like, why do you bike? What are your top 3 reasons or something? Why do you do it versus driving a car?
For me, the number one reason is community. I feel like I've met so many incredible people, some of my closest friends, through being involved in the biking and active transportation communities. And every time I go to an event, I meet someone new, and I learn about a new organization who are committed to the work, who are sharing this vision that we kind of articulated earlier about a just and sustainable future for San Diego. And that's really impactful, and I love to be a part of that. Additionally, it's really fun. It's really enjoyable. It's special to be.
And the community here in San Diego, I find has come a long way, since, and maybe I was just unaware of it before, but in the past like 3 or 4 years, there's really been sort of a re-engagement by a lot of people where it just seems like there's a lot more people on the street, and everybody really shows up to the rides.
Oh, cool. I love to hear that. I wonder if it's because some of the projects that have been in the pipeline for so long are like finally coming to fruition. I first got involved with Bike SD when 4th and 5th Avenue, the Sandite projects, came on around the time that Mead Avenue came on and were finished. And then more recently, we've seen the completion of Pershing Drive. And so that has made immense progress for our connectivity in the bike network in Uptown.
Yeah.
So we can see more people accessing places
nice
they
to see
never
that.
would have safely. I benefit from Park Boulevard, which has been completed within the last few years, and I use every day. And so I think that's the safety and like the network that we're talking about that makes it possible that for people to bike and they can see other people doing it and kind of get involved. But even
So
the social
community
scene.
and fun. What was your
Fun.
third?
Oh, financial.
Totally.
My
right.
partner and I used to have 2 cars, and being able to bike to work has made it possible to have 1 car between us. He works all the way in UCSD, and so sometimes we'll combine car and trolley, but it's saved on insurance and registration and maintenance, and so I feel like that's been a really important reason too.
Yeah. Those are a good top 3 to have. the financial that I experience, and it, it it gets to a lot. There's a lot of sort of knock-ons I find too. In addition to the financial, I probably save between parking and gas and all of those various things $6,000 or $7,000 a year just riding a bike.
Totally.
But then the other effects that I find, the obvious physical fitness that you get for nothing. I mean, it's just a free bonus. But the anxiety that I feel when I drive, it seems just it's the opposite when I bicycle. It's a time when I can think and a time when I can relax, versus a time when I'm just sitting there just trying to get where I'm going and not die in this machine.
Yeah, that's real. And I notice that too. Not all the time, but often when I'm biking, I feel more mindful and more present, like on the way to and from work, which is a great way to start my day, versus like the more hyper vigilance that I feel when I'm driving and trying to like really make sure that the systems that weren't designed to protect people, like the roads and everything, trying to keep everybody safe. It feels like a lot of responsibility that I don't know if everyone considers while they're getting behind the wheel.
No, drivers have gotten pretty bad lately. We were talking about that a lot lately, where you don't expect people to use turn signals anymore. You don't expect, you really have to expect people are going to do the unexpected at all times on a bike. But I think that's part of really, that comes with miles. That comes with time on the road. You just learn to have those expectations and ride in ways where you're not susceptible, at least to most of it.
Yeah.
What do you see are the sacrifices? Because there are some. There's a reason why not everybody rides a bike.
Yeah, for sure. I think some of them are smaller, more minor inconveniences. Like when it rains, it just makes things a little bit more difficult, even though it doesn't rain extremely often in San Diego. It could be minor things like, oh, it's kind of annoying to take my bags on and off the bike. It's very minor, but the bigger issues I think are more structural when we talk about gaps in the bike network that make it harder to get where we need to go. For example, the lack of direct and safe access to the trolley from uptown eventually will be improved with Washington Street bike lanes, but at this point it's still a little difficult. And getting to Mission Valley or getting across the 8 can be really dangerous places. And so I do think it has shrunken the range that I'm always comfortable going and restricted maybe more to uptown or where I'm comfortable.
Yeah, safety is definitely a concern, and we are really lucky to live here, where we can ride 364 days a year.
Truly.
And that's a blessing. But in certain places, we have the technology and we have a lot of clothing. Like I have a poncho that I wear. I pretty much ride rain or shine. And I always carry my poncho if there's any chance of rain. And I use it probably 10 times a year.
Yeah.
And, it just makes everything possible. My feet get a little wet on my 10-mile ride, which is no big deal.
Small price to pay.
Yeah.
Maybe have extra shoes at work.
Yeah. And I find that, for you and I, where we don't have a 30-minute commute or a 30-mile commute, as long as you can sort of conduct your life in that sort of way where you don't have to cover these great distances and you can sort of shrink your circle, I think is a really good preparatory step in being successful at life by bike. You can't expect to start by riding 60 miles a day and carrying all your stuff on your road bike sort of thing.
That's so true. I like thinking about it like one step at a time for new people. I feel like your point also brings up the way that biking and active transportation advocacy overlaps with a lot of other issues that are related. Environmental justice or density, making sure there's enough housing for people, in a community and there's a grocery store and there are things that people need in the vicinity where it can be walkable, bikeable, transitable.
Yep. That's tough in this town too.
Yeah.
But at least affording it is tough. It's there if you can afford it.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's see. So other than that, I want to go a little deeper in sacrifices, because I think that is where excuses come from. You know, and safety is a big one. Most people, when I tell them that I ride a bike and they may be a cyclist, or they may say, oh, I'd love to do that, but it's usually safety. It's, 9 times out of 10 when I have those conversations, it's just people that are scared of being on the road with cars, and that is a valid concern. And it's getting better in pockets here in San Diego, but I certainly don't feel like this city or Sandag is taking it nearly as seriously as they should, because we are the ones doing the right thing. We are the ones making change, and to be gaslighted like we are sometimes is it's not great. It's not a good look, and I don't think it's going to age well. But we have to keep fighting the fight, and that's basically where we're at right now. We need such big transformational change, and we're fighting these little tiny fights every time, and it just, I know it's exhausting for all of us, especially the ones doing the actual work like you. So.
For sure. I totally understand where you're coming from. And a lot feels out of our control right now at, I don't know, maybe the state, national level. And I think for that reason, we really need to dive into our communities even deeper, like you're kind of saying. And I understand your disappointment with the progress we've made, or maybe lack thereof. When you mentioned that, I think the Vision Zero comes to mind, which is a promise or an agreement that the city made that says our goal is to achieve 0 serious injuries or fatalities by 2025, which is the year we're in now.
Pedestrians and bicycles.
Pedestrians, bicyclists, yeah. And we have not only not achieved that, but we're seeing numbers continue to rise.
Yeah.
And it can be discouraging. And what also comes to mind is our climate action plan, which is making really ambitious mode shift goals, trying to move up certain percentages, and I can pull it up, from driving to active modes of transportation like biking, walking, and taking transit. And yeah, I hope that our leaders can understand that this is immediate for a lot of reasons. People are dying, and people, there could be a lot of suffering in the future if we're not taking drastic steps to mitigate climate change and disaster now, because it is already here. Just our neighbors to the north with wildfires that hurt so many people, and we've lost so much property. There's immense costs to that I think, and even here in San Diego last January, there was a year's worth of rainfall within 3 hours, and these events will continue to happen unless we do something really ambitious.
Drastic.
Drastic.
Drastic. Yeah. The thing is that we can, that the end goal is to really get to sustainability, and sustainable transportation is actually a pretty big part of that. But the setting goals is great, but giving people realistic options that are actually practicable in time frame with the technology that is available is what needs to happen, and that's not happening at this point. But we can all, that's the end that we're all working toward, and unfortunately, bikes and e-bikes and trains and things like that is the future. Buses are sort of a stopgap measure as I see it, whether it's express buses or city buses, or just a lot of those and the little
Oh, like the circulator.
yeah, the circulators and the
little-
the
The Fred in downtown.
yeah, sort of the what do they call those? Just sort of the little commuter sort of connector bus type of
Oh,
things.
got
I
it.
mean, those are great for the time being, but where we need to get is to bicycles and trains, and that's really what sustainable transportation looks like long term.
Totally.
And we can do that now, and we can make those investments and save all the damage that's done, or we can do that in 75 years, and we'll have done all of that damage, and we'll still be in the same place.
Right.
Except the world will be ruined.
So you're saying like we need to do it either way. Why not now?
Yeah, we need to do it either way. Why not
Yeah.
do it now? Why not save all the mess, the mess, if you will.
I totally agree. And just looking at some of our climate action plan reports, I think most recently from 2022, over 50% of San Diego's greenhouse gas emissions comes from on-road transportation, which is like cars, primarily like personal vehicles.
Yeah.
And for the sake of like talking about what people can do, switching out, even just at the beginning, like one drive per week with a different mode would be like an incredible way to start.
Yeah, you can cut your vehicle miles traveled. I mean, if you can cut that by 50%, we're well on our way.
Yeah.
And that's a worthy, that's a real goal that people should have. We can't be purists about any of this. We need to meet people where they are and be realistic about what people can and will do, which
Totally.
I think is a big part of it. So yeah, next sort of part that I want to get into is we know you're at Bike SD. Are there other clubs and organizations and stuff here in town that you're a part of that you want to give a little shout out to or tell us about?
Absolutely. I will have to start with Bike SD, which of course there are so many opportunities to get involved. Recently we've been working on committees that are being led by board members and supported by volunteers. We're still looking for additional people. There are programs like Bike Match, which matches people who have a bike they're willing to donate with people who need one to get to where they need to go. This is a program that started all the way back in 2020, but was originated by Transportation Alternatives in Brooklyn. This was mainly to get like first responders and frontline workers during the pandemic, like bikes and means of transportation. So trying to restart that and like adapt it to where we are now. There are the Bike SD Presents, which is like a speaker series. We've had guests like John Botters from Emeryville, California. We've had Bike Lane Uprising, Christina Whitehouse. Yeah. She has been here, which was remarkable.
Yeah, she was awesome.
We've had Advocacy 101 meetings. And so if you want to kind of be part of who the next people will be, you can be part of Bike SD Presents. We have the State of the Bike Network report. We have a merch committee. We have a committee for volunteer recruitment and engagement, as well as social rides. And I can share my contact details a little bit later if anyone wishes to get involved. Yeah, we also have a lot of like an advocacy meeting every first Sunday of the month at Gem Coffee on Euclid and El Cajon Boulevard, which is a place to just like bring your ideas and your questions and is a place to learn about biking in San Diego.
Yeah.
And a new partnership with Original 40 on University, like a little rev share partnership. Every fourth Monday of the month, we'll be there from 6 to 8 p.m. and a portion of the revenue will go to Bike SD and support our work.
Cool.
Which is wonderful.
I love the new T-shirts that the Cybertruck T-shirts that are coming out. I'm excited about that.
On the precipice of some new merch, which is already in motion, which brings me to the next organization that I would have to shout out, which is Nice and Easy. Vic and Ernesto and so many other people who are involved in like creating space for like celebrating and being joyful on bikes and being visible. I think that's a big one. Yeah. People a lot of the time say no one's using the lanes. But it's hard to deny when a group of 50 to 100 are cruising down 30th Street. Like people see us then and they notice. And even if I don't know if you've experienced this too. If you're in a group of more than 4 or 5 bikes, I feel like it'll turn heads. People will be like, oh wow, look at all those
Especially if
bikers.
you're making noise.
Yeah, that's real. That's a real. And additionally, the work of Families for Safe Streets is a group of people who have been impacted by traffic violence in some way, whether they have survived it themselves or they've lost loved ones to traffic violence. Their work is so important to advocate for safer streets from that angle. And just to try to call people in and say, you know, it shouldn't have to affect you all to care about it. So I really respect all that they're doing, Laura and Michelle and Mary and so many other people.
Yeah, they're doing amazing work there. That's great. And I go on as many nice and easies as I possibly can. It's because
So
it's
fun.
just it's such a fun crowd, and it's just such a good sort of representation, I think, of the bike community, you know, because it's
Totally.
everybody from, you know, there's spandex to jeans, and there's everybody's welcome, and nobody gets dropped, and it's it gets people, I think, way more comfortable on the road. It's just and we get to have beers and meet new people.
Totally.
I mean, what could be better?
Exactly. I know from brewery to brewery, they have coffee rides too. There's like a little something for everyone. There have been rides to and from like yoga classes. So they're just really doing a lot of good stuff right now.
Cool. So next, I want to sort of, we'll go over your bike. I want to sort of check out your ride,
course.
and yeah, let's walk
Let's
over
do it.
there. So
Give it a
this is your whip. You've got the lighting package.
Yeah, this is the whip. This is the first bike I've ever had that wasn't a beach cruiser.
Cool.
Growing up in the coastal LA County, that's...
So you've had this a while.
Yeah, I think maybe 4 years.
Okay.
So it's been around for a while. My commute on bike isn't particularly long, so you know I'm still learning how to take care of it. But some of the things that I've added, of course, yeah, lighting like front and back, lighting in the wheel to be visible from both front, back, and also from the side. We got
wheel lights
gears.
are awesome.
I know.
I mean, at night, that's you just and
It's super important.
Are those like
and little like snap-in reflectors.
Okay, cool.
This is from when Bike Lane Uprisings, Christina Whitehouse visited and got those from them, which add a little color, a little visibility. Got the back rack.
Bike, yeah, of course,
Here.
of course. You've got your bell, of course, because
Of course.
I probably use my bell.
A little quiet.
I probably use my bell 30, 40 times a day.
What do you say?
Just give people a heads up.
Just right
Hey,
here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm here.
I feel like that's
don't run
wise.
into me. Don't walk out into the bike lane.
Honestly, yeah, that's always important.
Totally.
People aren't always looking.
And your little mirror.
Helmet, little mirror, which I can usually see myself in, but
Yep.
maybe I'll change the handlebars so it gets a little bit farther out.
I like the bar end mirrors.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best
Yeah,
thing.
those are nice
That's
too.
the best scenario.
But yeah, so a nice rack.
Yeah.
Totally.
This has been for like, oh, it's on the other side. The best investment I've ever made was this little net guy to put groceries on the back.
Okay.
Snap it in just like,
So just put a bag up here.
Yeah, put a
and
bag and
put a thing
it'll
over it.
secure. Yeah. It's made a
Cool.
huge difference. It's made so many more things possible that wouldn't have been otherwise.
You can do a lot. On this rig, you could definitely do a pretty hefty grocery trip.
Yeah,
you know, as
you
long
definitely
as
can.
you weren't getting, you know, cases, as long as it wasn't a Costco trip, maybe.
Right. Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can fill both these up, put a bag in the middle. I'm going to test out the rig in bike camping in a few weekends.
Cool.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
And
Maybe
this
add some more bags.
this is a nice bike for around San Diego because
Mm-hmm.
it's got nice fat tires that you probably don't have to run at 60 psi.
Yeah.
Because the roads here suck. So we just have to always, you know, almost have off-road bikes to ride on the road.
Yeah. 'Cause the potholes and the cracks might come out of nowhere, and they can navigate it well.
Yep, and a nice 3x system so you can get up the hills should
Disc
you
brakes,
need to.
Yeah.
Yep, disc
Yeah.
brakes. Yeah, this is a nice rig.
Yeah, it gets the job done.
And it's not heavy
Not too heavy. No.
compared to my cargo bike.
Right.
That's
I know. Just need to get a kickstand on
That's
there.
sweet. So what's your while we're at it, like what is your security protocol? How do you lock up? Because that's an important, we all
Yeah.
have stories about getting bikes stolen.
I know. When I was in college, I had a few stolen. I think I have them it all in here. But
Yep.
ideally, you lock, and then it's not compatible all with every kind of rack that you'll see, but some of the thinner ones, or even like the signs that'll have like
Yep.
parking information on it.
I like that size actually.
Yeah,
This one,
I
this
think
one will
it's good.
I think this is a 9-inch kryptonite U-lock, and this will get you like parking meters, most bike racks, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
That it's because some of them they make them skinnier and they make them shorter, but this is actually a really useful size for most situations.
Yeah, it is. It gets through the back wheel and through the frame here, and it'll
Yep.
get on one side, and then you can
Use your
add
little.
the little cord
Yep.
to go through the front wheel in situations where it's needed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other security measures that you would recommend?
I don't have any other going right now other than
Always.
if you're new to commuting, like checking in with your workplace, if there's a secure place for you to keep your bike is always a good idea, and that's helped me a lot.
Yeah, and try not to park it in like a dark alley where nobody ever walks.
Totally.
If there's a busy place where there's lots of people coming and going, that's usually the best place to lock up versus some places where they put bike
Totally.
racks.
Yeah, within your sight, if possible,
Yeah,
but not
within
always
sight.
possible.
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
Well, cool. Thanks for showing us
Of
that.
course, thank you.
All right. So we kind of went over your security protocol. A few things that I use too. It's always good to have layers. And in addition to, using a U-lock and parking in a place where there's traffic or eyeballs. And don't count on security cameras because a lot of times that doesn't work out to people's advantage when bikes actually get stolen. But also, we have little motion sensor alarms that we just buy on Amazon for $20. That's a great deterrent if somebody just starts messing with your bags or whatever. Those can be useful and easily hidden. I usually do tiles on my bike too, which are always a good idea and relatively inexpensive. Kind of a good investment. But yeah, outside of that, just try. It's hard because some people have to leave their bikes outside overnight. Some people don't have garages, and they're parking in their courtyard or whatever the case may be. But they're in an ideal world, we would all have a little garage, and I think it's as an employer, for these guys, it having a decent place to park your bike, you should always just like lobby for that at your place of business, so you can have your bike somewhere safe where it's not out on the street and in a situation that it's going to get stolen.
Totally.
But so yeah, outside of that, we kind of talked about safety a little bit, but we'll sort of go back at that because a lot of bike commuting in my experience is about your route choice and about your because I have 3 or 4 different ways that I ride to work, and it kind of depends on what I need to do on the way there, but it also depends on the time of day and sort of when those roads are most dangerous. So do you have any, like, what does your commute look like, and do you consider it to be safe? And there's obviously we all have sort of different experiences that way. So what does yours look like?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to be really close to my place of work, and it might only be a 1.5 miles or 2 miles away from my house. And so now with the Park Boulevard lanes, it's for the most part entirely protected by Class 4 facilities.
Nice.
Still, there are some conflicts when cars want to turn right, especially going past the zoo.
On Park Boulevard.
On Park Boulevard, yeah, turning right. Honestly, anywhere and into any of the cross streets, there can be like a conflict there, which is always something to be mindful about.
Yeah, right-hand turn signals.
Yeah.
Are a thing. I've seen several people get hit that way where
Yeah, like
somebody
the right
just
hook
made
risk.
a right hook. And yeah, drivers, use your right turn signal. Anytime.
Use your turn
Yeah,
signal
use your
whenever,
turn signals in
whenever you
general.
want.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to get onto Park Boulevard, though, I do need to make an unprotected left turn, and it's usually pretty busy and can be chaotic. So, just like assessing risk, sometimes I'll just pull over to the crosswalk and like cross and then
Yeah.
proceed, just because it can be really hard to be behind a car wanting to turn left. A lot of cars are moving and
Yeah.
maybe not looking, especially at like a drop-off point where there's a school. People often are focused on like in their own world.
Yeah.
And so we just have to be defensive.
Yeah, trying to get across lanes of traffic to make a left turn can be really dangerous. So using crosswalks is just, it's oftentimes it's a great idea.
Yeah.
The safe, just do what is safe.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of being on bike. You can kind of become a pedestrian when you need to be, when it's the safer thing to do.
Like outside of your work and stuff, you obviously ride for, doing your shopping and
Yeah.
going to, I don't know if you ride down to the beach or stuff like that, but like about those, and you want to do bike camping and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like what does some of those journeys look like?
I feel like a lot of the time I'll do them for the first time with a friend. I feel like that's a good way to go about it. You'll have someone who knows the route. You can go together and kind of learn a little bit. I would say never sleep on like the trolley connection, like, building multiple active transportation options into your route, whether it's like bus or trolley, can help you get places
Mm-hmm. Do you use the
through
trolley
safer.
with your bike?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, my partner does often too, to get up to UCSD. I know that can be sometimes challenging, that there aren't designated spots for bikes or places to like minimize them a little bit. Like I've seen sometimes in Portland where you can like flip up your bike and hook it into like a designated
rack,
part,
yeah.
which would be wonderful to see. And
Yeah.
it is too bad that some of the buses have only 2 racks, but I know that a lot of them are now having 3 racks on the front of a bus for more options.
I can almost always get to where I'm going faster if I skip the bus.
That's real. That's real. The transfer can be a really difficult thing.
Yeah, here the bus system. I've seen a lot. I've lived in a lot of different places, and some of them have train systems. Some of them have actual good bus systems. And San Diego seems to just be one of those places where it takes forever to get anywhere on a bus. So I usually skip that. But I did do a trip recently up to LA on my bike, where I went on the surf liner and took my bike on there with my gear and stayed at a little hostel up there, and it was magical. It was such a cool
So
experience. But it was you can't take cargo bikes on the the trains or anything yet, but there are certain length requirements and stuff. But I think
sure.
that would be great if they afforded us a little more space, because it was crowded with bikes on there, and you had to make a special reservation and all of that. It wasn't like a walk-on thing, which in certain places it is.
That's good to know for anyone who's considering that option.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about your bicycle infrastructure with Park Boulevard and that sort of part of town. I think that's been built out, and North Park's been built out to a certain degree. Hillcrest is a work in progress, as are most of the neighborhoods. And I find that we've been waiting for university for 20 years or so, when they first started planning that project, and there seems to be these great delays in actually finishing projects. We'll basically get a taste of it here and a taste of it there, and it won't get tied together for years and years and years in between. So the connectivity of the bicycle network is really the secret sauce, and how it all works, and how we get people to do it more. And it's it's, it's not any, I guess it's, we're working as hard as we can to make these things happen, and we can go to Sandag meetings and yell and scream and beat on the table as much as we want and make suggestions on what needs to happen. But at the end of the day, we need to have allies in positions of power that I don't feel like we have right now, where you were talking about John Bowers and those types of guys, where a mayor that actually takes bicycle infrastructure seriously and to the next level and really prioritizes that is what we need in San Diego. Which is, we thought we had that, I think, a couple of times when we were voting for people, but then it didn't end up materializing at the end of the day. So just a notation.
No, that's a good point. I totally agree. I think part of the solution, and there are many parts, I'm sure, but is to continue to build relationships and power with people, as we're doing here, and in the communities that we're part of, to make it harder and harder for politicians to say no, and make it hard for them to not fulfill the promises that they're making, like in terms of voting power and things like that.
Yeah. And I think we're getting to be, I don't know if I would necessarily call it the majority here in San Diego, but there's definitely, we're definitely getting some city council members, I think, on our side now, and we have been for a number of years. So yeah, it's just a numbers game, I guess, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and showing up to support
and being loud.
them, and being loud, and clearly communicating like the vision we want to see, and trying to work with and uplift electeds who are on the same page as us.
There's a lot of different spots in San Diego where east west there are some real pinch points.
Totally.
And then especially sort of at Florida Canyon, there's sort of around University, it's not particularly safe to ride University, especially between like Park Boulevard and like Texas. Is
That's
really,
a really tough
sketchy
spot.
So that's always a spot where I've tried to find all the sort of routes that I can, and there's one little route sort of through somebody's property that there's a little trail that you can ride up.
Oh, interesting.
That I went and I actually did a little night op and poured a bunch of concrete in there and did a little ghetto infrastructure work one night.
No kidding.
And paved it all out and made it so a normal person on a normal bike could get through there again, because it had all washed out.
Interesting.
But I love sort of doing those sort of guerrilla infrastructure projects, and I'm going to definitely do more of those.
That's needed too. There are a lot of ways to get things done.
Totally. And if you've ever done a get it done thing, I mean, I've done a lot of those, and it's I find that some of the simple stuff they'll actually fix properly, but about 75% of the time they'll either argue or they'll do an ineffective repair, and you have to revisit it several times and make a lot of noise, and that shouldn't be the case with a get it done app like that. They should send somebody out and they should fill a pothole till it's full, sort of thing. But my last experience with that and my last contact with that was there was a crack in the road on Laurel that was probably about a foot wide, about 4 inches deep, where you're descending Laurel, which is a steep road.
Yeah.
Right near the Casbah, and a busy road. And it was getting more dangerous every rainstorm, more and more dangerous. And I submitted that, and they said they couldn't fix it because it was a crack and not a pothole. So I went ballistic, and I said, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to shut that road down, and I'm going to do a night op and fix it myself. And they had it fixed that weekend.
That's so interesting.
So, you know, it's unfortunate that that's what you have to do to get hysterical, to get them to do something. But, you know, as evidenced by my experience, you know, when when they say no, you have to make a stink, unfortunately.
I'm so glad that was successful, and it is a shame that it took that much to get it done when it should really be like something that is taken seriously and is an effective tool. But often I hear stories like you're sharing where it'll be resolved and nothing has actually happened. And it is really time consuming for people to be following up like that all the time.
Oh yeah. It's
but I guess it's one of the tools in the tool belt, and I think there could be opportunities for like getting a lot of people together to report it, and it's just something that they can't ignore.
See, the problem I see with like that model of get it done is you can't report every little thing that needs to be fixed. Like the system has to be at a certain level of repair for you to, you know, call it nitpick or call out these smaller deficiencies.
Sure.
But when the whole system is falling apart and is degrading in the ways that ours is, we can't possibly do that. It would take all day every day for us to do that.
And
it's crazy that they just don't have a surveyor that drives around town and says, oh, that pothole is dangerous, that crack in the road is dangerous. It doesn't seem like that exists in this town at this point.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I know certain portions of city streets are scheduled for resurfacing on different like schedules. But what we're noticing with potholes and cracks in the road is another symptom of car-centric culture, where cars are getting heavier and heavier and inflicting more damage on like roads and public spaces that require immense investments in money to repair and maintain, where bikes would contribute a fraction. You could ride a bike on the same road for 1,000 years and not inflict the same amount of
and don't get
damage.
me started on the $1 million buses that ride around San Diego empty all day. But all right, so how do we get more people onto bikes? I mean, we've talked about a lot of the safety stuff, and that's the obvious low-hanging fruit. Do you have any like silver bullets?
Silver bullets.
Anything you'd like to share there, or just?
I do think safety is the number one thing. If people are worried about their safety, it makes it so much harder to make the argument. But when we show them ways that are dedicated for bikes, that are class 4 protected by flex posts, sure, but maybe as we continue our advocacy to make them be separated by something stronger, like concrete barriers and curbs, to prevent cars from going and drivers from entering the bike lanes,
and from parking in them.
And for all these reasons, to prevent like human error of them like swerving into bike lanes and just protecting people. I think should be our first priority. Broadly, I think we would benefit from a mindset and culture shift that views biking as its own valid form of transportation and not just recreation. That seems like an enormous thing, but one way we can do that is through making it safer, through showing up on bikes and like being visible, like we also talked about. It could be by talking with people about in ways that make sense to them and that resonate with them. If people are worried about and concerned about parking, we can talk about how it's more people who are biking or less people like fighting for a parking spot things like that. And this also came from when John Bowders visited San Diego, which may seem kind of obvious, but when he said it, it really kind of sunk in. But if people are talking about like facts, we can respond with facts. But if people are kind of talking with emotion, we can kind of talk about like emotion too, like our safety and our own experiences. And additionally, we could support people like in our communities if they are curious about what biking might look like in their life. We can kind of help them figure it out and what it might be like for them.
Totally. A lot of people need help, and it's there's a lot of moving parts to sort of living your life this way, and it's just giving people the little hacks and the little tips and tricks, and
which is what you're doing with this podcast.
Yeah, that's really what we're here for. So anybody that you would like to shout out or recommend as a guest? I know we have a lot of friends in common, so I'll get to them eventually, but
I know
anybody in particular?
I could go on, but I would love for you all to talk with Michelle Gonzalez of Families for Safe Streets.
Yeah.
She's an incredible person, has organized the World Day of Remembrance along with folks at Families for Safe Streets, which is a really impactful event. Often shows up for advocacy and organizes rallies. Like, I think she would provide a really, really impactful perspective.
Awesome.
Well,
cool. I think that that pretty much gets us where we wanted to be on time.
Wow. Awesome.
So, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. This was really great.